In this video, we are going to solve this coding interview question, ransom note. In this problem, we are given two strings, ransom note and magazine. We have to check whether we can construct the ransom note from the magazine letter or not. We see that in this magazine, we have the letter A, B, C, and D. We can use each letter of this magazine string can only be used once in this string ransom note. We see that we have A, we have A, we have B, then we have A. We see that we have only one A in this magazine. So we have to return false. We cannot construct a ransom note from magazine. So for these examples, we are going to return false. For example, if we are given ransom note equals to BAD and magazine equals to ABCD, we have to check whether we can construct a ransom note from magazine letter or not. We can use each letter from magazine only once in this string ransom note. We see that we have B, here we have B, we have A, here we have A, then we have D, we have here D. So we can construct this ransom note from this magazine string. So we have to return true. For example, if we are given ransom note equals to code and magazine equals to ABCODF, can we construct this string from this string? We see that we have here C, we have here C, we have O, we have O here, then we have D, we have here D. We see that here we have E. E doesn't exist. E doesn't exist in this string. So we cannot construct this ransom note from this magazine letter. So we have to return false for this example. If we are given this example, we see that we have here P, we have here P, then we have R, we have here R, then O, here we have O, then we have G, here we have G, then we have R, here we have R, then we have A, here we have A, then M, we have here M. So we can construct this ransom note from this magazine. We can construct this ransom note from this magazine string. So for this example, we have to return true. Now let's see how to solve this problem. For example, we have this ransom note and we have this magazine. We have to check whether we can construct this string from this string or not. We can use each letter from magazine only once in this string ransom note. We see this is a hash map problem. We can solve this problem using hash map data structure. Let's construct two hash map with the frequency of each letter. So let's create here a hash map. B appears once, then A appears once, then D appears once. Let's construct hash map for this magazine as well. So A appears once, B appears once, C appears once, and D appears once. We have constructed here two hash map. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna check the frequency of each letter in this frequency table. For B, we see that the frequency of B is 1. Here the frequency of B is 1. Then we have A. The frequency of A here 1, here we see 1. Then the frequency of D is 1, the frequency of D is 1. If we saw the frequency of each letter of this frequency table is equal to or less than the frequency of that letter in this frequency table, then what we are going to do, we are going to return true. We see the frequency of each letter of this table equals to the frequency of this table. So we are going to return true. If we are given ransom note equals to code and magazine equals to ABC, ODF. Let's construct our hash map. C appears once, O appears once, D appears once, and E appears once. Now let's construct frequency table for this string magazine. A appears once, B appears once, C appears once, O appears once, then D appears once, and F appears once. Now let's check the frequency of each letter we have in this frequency table. This is the frequency table for ransom note. This is the frequency table for magazine. Now let's iterate over the item of this frequency table. First we have C. For C we see that the frequency of C is 1. Here we have frequency 1. Now for O we see that the frequency of O is 1. Here we see the frequency of O is 1. Then D, the frequency of D is 1. Here we have the frequency of D is 1. Then for E, the frequency of E is 1, but here we see that the letter E does not exist in this frequency table. So we cannot construct this ransom note from magazine. We cannot construct ransom note. So we are going to return false. Instead creating two hash map, what we can do, we can create an array of size 26 to keep track of the frequency of a string. In this problem, we are given always English lowercase alphabet. We know that in English alphabet we have 26 letters. So we can create an array of size 26 to keep track the frequency of each letter. This is our array of size 26. We have total 26 English letter. A maps to 0, B maps to 1, C maps to 2, and so on. We are going to map A with 0, we're going to map B with 1, with index 1, we're going to map C with index 2, and so on. Now what we are going to do, we are going to iterate over this magazine string. The first letter we see we have A. So here for A at index 0, we're going to store 1. We're going to increase by 1, so we get here 1. We have here 1. It tells us we have one letter A in our magazine string. Now let's move to the next. We see B. For B, the index is 1. At 1, let's increase. So we get here 1. Here we see B maps to 1. How we can find out the index number? How to get the index number 1 for B? If we subtract the ASCII value of A from the ASCII value of B, we will get the corresponding index. Let's move forward. We see we have C. So here we're going to increase by 1. Then we have D. Let's increase this by 1. D maps to 3. D maps to 3. Here we have in this array, we have here 1, here we have 1, here we have 1, here we have 1. It means that we have a string in our magazine where we have a letter A, B, C, D. Now what we are going to do, we are going to iterate over our ransom note. The first letter is B. Now we're going to check the appearance of B. We see the appearance of B is not 0. So we can get this letter from this ransom note. So we can get this letter. We can get the letter B to construct this string. Since we choose one letter, let's decrease the frequency of B from our frequency array. So here what we're gonna do, we are going to decrease. We get here 0. Now let's move forward. We have A. We see that the frequency of A in our magazine is 1. So we can get the letter from our magazine string. Here let's decrease the value by 1, so we get here 0. Let's move forward. We have here D. We see that the frequency of D is 1. So we can get the letter D from our magazine string. So let's decrease this value by 1, so we get here 0. We are done. We see that we can construct this ransom note from this magazine. So we are done. We are going to return true since we constructed our string from our magazine string. So we are going to return true. Let's take one more example for better understanding. For example, we have ransom equals to code and magazine equals to this string. We have here mapping a maps to 0, b maps to 1, and so on. We have here our frequency array. Now let's iterate over our magazine string. First we have a. The appearance of a is 1 up until this point in this string. Let's move forward. B. For b maps to index 1. So here what we're gonna do, we are going to increase by 1. Now let's move forward. We have c. C maps to 2. So here let's increase, we get 1. Let's move forward. O. We see that O maps to 14. So O maps to this index 14. So let's increase this value by 1. Let's move forward. We get here D. D maps to 3. So let's increase this value by 1. Let's move forward. We get F. F maps to 5. Let's increase this value by 1. So after processing our magazine array, we get this frequency table. This frequency table tells us the frequency of each letter. The frequency of A is 1, frequency of B is 1, frequency of C is 1, and so on. Here if we write out this G, then here the frequency of G is 0. That means G does not exist in our magazine string. Now let's iterate over our ransom node. First we have C. Does the frequency of C is 0? No. So we can get this letter from our magazine. Let's decrease this value by 1. We get here 0. Let's move forward. O. Does O exist in our magazine? If we look at here, we see the frequency of O is 1. So we can get this. Let's decrease this value. We get here 0. Let's move forward. We see we have D. Does D exist in our magazine? We see frequency of D is 1. So we can get the letter D. D exists in our magazine. Let's decrease it since we chose this D. Let's move forward. We see E. For E, we see that the frequency is 0. If we have frequency 0, that means E does not exist in our magazine. We cannot get this letter C. So we cannot construct this string code from this magazine string. So we are going to return false. This algorithm will take time complexity O of m plus n, where m is the length of this string, n is the length of this string. And this algorithm takes space complexity O of 26 for this frequency array. This is how we can solve this problem. The hash map solution takes time complexity O of m plus n and space complexity O of m plus n. We improve this space complexity from m plus n to O of 26, which is constant. Now let's implement this algorithm. In this problem, we have to check whether we can construct this string ransom node from this string magazine or not. First, let's create our frequency array. So int frequency, let's call it freq equals to new int of size 26. Now let's construct this frequency table. Let's call it frequency. Now we're going to iterate over our string magazine. So for int I equals to 0, I less than magazine dot length I plus plus. Right inside here, let's find out our current character C. C equals to magazine dot char at I. Now let's find out the corresponding index for our current letter. If we subtract the ASCII value of A from the ASCII value of this character C, what we will get? We will get the corresponding index of our current letter. So let's find out the corresponding index in our frequency table and let's increase by 1. When we're done with this loop, we will have the frequency of each letter of magazine in this frequency table. Now right below here, we have to iterate over this ransom node. So for int I equals to 0, I less than ransom note dot length I plus plus. Right inside here, let's find out our current character c equals to ransom note dot char at I. Now we're gonna check the frequency of our current character in our frequency table. So if frequency c minus the ASCII value of a, if we subtract the ASCII value of a from our current letter or from our current character, we'll get the corresponding index. If we saw our current character does not exist in our frequency table, we will have the frequency 0. If the frequency 0, we're going to immediately return false. We will hit this line if the frequency of our current character is not 0. So here what we're gonna do, we are going to subtract the frequency by 1. If this line never executed, it means that we can construct our ransom note from magazine. So right below here, let's return true. This is our algorithm. This algorithm takes time complexity of m plus n, and it takes space complexity of 26, which is constant. Now let's run this code. It passed 3 sample test cases. Let's submit it. We see that we have solved this problem successfully. I hope you've understood this video explanation. If you have any question, you can post your question on the Q&A forum. Thanks for watching this video.